And welcome back, everybody. Hands on Apologetics. And we're going to talk about the Greek miracle, God's miraculous preparation for Christ. And like I said at the beginning of the show, one of my areas of specialty is the Deuterocanon, the Old Testament Deuterocanon, the 7 Old Testament books that Jews and Protestants don't accept as scripture, but Catholics and Orthodox do. And there is a section that the Deuterocanon covers. It's right before the time of Christ, where God miraculously transforms the landscape in a way that couldn't have been fathomed at the beginning of the process. And since practically no one knows about this period, and although we do cover it a bit in my YouTube channel, Apocrypha Apocalypse, I thought it would be good to rehearse this. Once again, this talk that I recently gave at the Applied Biblical Studies Conference in Franciscan University of Steubenville, which I went over very well. And I'm really encouraged because I think this part of salvation history is very apropos to what we're going through right now. And I think it'll give us a lot of courage and also perhaps direct our paths in some ways, right? So why? Well, what I did was I began my talk by trying to situate the audience in the how Jews would look at their landscape coming back from the Babylonian captivity. 70 years of captivity in Babylon through a miraculous and predicted, by the way, return to the Holy Land. The Jews found themselves once again in Jerusalem, rebuilding the temple and actually receiving the temple utensils from the Persians that liberated them from Babylon. And so there was I'm sure they felt incredible exhilaration and also fear as well. And it's interesting because I think what they felt was probably something that we felt back in June to the 24th of this year with the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Like I always believed that it would be overturned. Lawyers, even since its inception, said it was a law that needed to be changed. But I wasn't really sure whether I'd see it in my lifetime. And then all of a sudden, June 24th, it's overturned. And the feeling I had, and I wonder if maybe this is the feeling that many of you had, is both exhilaration and uneasiness, right? And I think that's what the Jews felt. At first, exhilaration, okay, obviously, this horrible thing has been overturned. But you also see God's fingerprints all over it, right? Because the solemnity, it happened on a date, June 24th, that in 2022, this year, a strange thing happens where there's 2 solemnities being celebrated on that day. Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which we focus on divine love and mercy, and also the Feast of the Nativity of John the Baptist. And, of course, the Nativity of John the Baptist is interesting. It's not John the Baptist, right? It's not his life. It's him, in the womb of his mother, right? So you have that interesting so-called coincidence, right? You also have, by the way, June 24th. A lot of people don't know this, but it's the birthday of Nellie Gray, who is the foundress of March for Life, and who's gone, God rest her soul. But nevertheless, it was overturned on her birthday. So you see God's fingerprints all over this. But the thing is that it's also uneasy. You have this exhilaration, but it's uneasy because the path forward is not very clear, is it? This didn't really set us anywhere forward. It actually brings everything back 49 years or so in the past where this thing shouldn't have even started way back then. So, you have that. And then before, the battle lines were pretty well drawn and we knew what we needed to do and everybody was marching. We knew what our opponents would do. All of that has changed, right? All of that has changed. So there's a exhilaration but an uneasiness. And I think the Jews coming out of captivity in Babylon was kind of in a similar situation. There's exhilaration, right? God has liberated us from the Babylonian captivity, 70 years in Babylon. Finally, we're back But we're not anywhere forward. We're actually back where we started from, right? Before we were carried off in exile because of our own wickedness. Okay. And then there's also this uneasiness because you're in the Holy Land, you're rebuilding the temple, but the second temple's not going to be as glorious as Solomon's temple. And on top of that, you're living in a land filled with debris and weeds, and you don't have any walls or fortification to protect you, yet you're surrounded by enemies. And you have this tension because God has made lots of promises that his son will sit on the throne. He'll be, the kingdom of David would be reconstituted through the Messiah. All these things that were promised. And you look around at the landscape, and quite frankly, the Jews were on a postage-sized stamp, type land. It's certainly not that of the kingdom of David, and certainly not even able to protect themselves. So how is God going to take us from this situation to the Messiah King, the Son of David? Right. So that's what we're going to talk about in this program, how God does this. And in the talk, I divided into 5 steps. So we'll look at those 5 different movements or steps that God does. And the reason I bring this up is because, well, you need to know this for Bible history. It helps you appreciate the Deuterocanon. But even if you're not into the Bible, the situation we're in today is very much like the situation that these Jews were in. And so it'll give you confidence in case anybody's out there despairing, right? Because if God can do this, he can change the culture that we live in today, although we might not see it, just like they didn't see it.